notice I had a bunch of people that reached out and they were like, hey, I'd love to, but you know, I've already got a client at that time, or I've got, you know, XYZ going on. So I wanted to I wanted to record this as well because I'll shoot it out to some people afterwards. But man, Steve knows I came across this information last night and I got super excited. I immediately reached out to Vince Paclov, reached out to Steve, and I was like, man, this shit just, it resonated, it hit home. And you know, as you know, professionally, what we're going through as a company with expansion, but you know, I've got, you know, obviously a lot of friends that are with other brands that are doing the same thing and always interviewing for managers. And I was just like, man, somebody had given me this list 15 years ago. Like I would have hit every person I was interviewing for a management position with this list of questions. I was pretty fired up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. I took this stuff that I came across last night, put it into a PowerPoint, and just kind of wanted to get right into that so that I've got time. I don't want to, you know, I certainly don't want to run out of time. I'm not sure if people come on right now, if I'll be able to let them in because I can't see like the waiting room, but I'll figure that out as we go. So this, I thought it was a good tee up. I'm combining two things. It certainly wasn't like a Ray Dalio work principle thing, but I think there's some correlations to this tile and the stuff that I wanted to dive into that got me really excited last night, right? So recognize that conflicts are essential for great relationships because they're how people determine whether their principles are aligned and resolve their differences. So to me, when I read that, that came to expectation setting, right? If you're aligned or if you're not, and if you're coming together, if you're driving each other apart, it's typically because you might not be on the same page. And I think a lot of what I got excited about last night that I wanted to cover today just really boiled down to expectation setting. And so, you know, what that looks like in this context, I think, you know, and again, it's important for me to not feel like I'm rambling when I'm doing this. So, you know, here on this slide, Jason, I see you on my camera there. Can you see what I'm sharing right now? I got Jason on mute. Yeah, I got a thumbs up. You want to unmute?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, can you read that slide so it's not just me talking into a box for 45 minutes?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So recognize that conflicts are essential for great relationships because they are how people determine whether their principles are aligned and resolve their differences. So everyone has his or her own principles and values. So all relationships entail a certain amount of negotiation or debate over how people should be with each other. What you learn about each other will either draw you together or drive you apart. If your principles are aligned and you can work out your differences via a process of give and take, you will draw closer together. If not, you will move apart. Open discussion of differences ensures that there are no misunderstandings. If that doesn't happen on an ongoing basis, gaps in perspective will widen until inevitably there is a major clash.
Yeah. So, Steve, you know what I've got. You know the content that I've got coming up. But those first couple of slides, you feel that? Does that set the stage?
Yeah, I think it tees it up perfectly.
Yeah. So let me. I'm gonna unshare really quick. Make sure that I don't have anybody that's pending for me to let in there. I'll reshare that screen real quick. Quick check. Nobody's waiting, and then I'll pop right into it there. So this is what it came down to, and really there was a call that I was on yesterday, and one of the questions on the call was about like, you know, hey, how do I get promoted? And that's a good question, right? If somebody's asking that, they're exhibiting a desire, at least, or an interest, maybe not a desire to move up, but at least an interest as to what that would entail and what that would look like, right? So you're going to see a lot of there's going to be a huge military framing from this, and I'll get to where I got it from at the end. But you know, we hear many officers say, "I'd do anything to get a command," right? And the question posed was, do you really mean that? Or one, are you suited for command? And the sort of follow-up question there, have you really considered what having a command entails, right? If you're sort of independent, if you're self-employed and you're going to scale your business, anytime you move into a role where now you're responsible for people other than just yourself, I think there's a lot of times there's just a huge gap in understanding what that entails. And again, I say that that's whether that's in the industry of fitness, whether that's in other things. As I was prepping for this morning, two scenarios leapt to mind for me in this whole, have you really been considered what having a command entails? The first one that struck me was this going on probably close to 20 years ago. I was getting ready to move from being a trainer to moving into a management role. And I had a buddy of mine at the time who did master's programs for business school admissions consulting. Like he would review people's essays that they had to write and walk them through the whole process of trying to get into their top tier school. And he was really good at what he did. He would only take on like 5 clients a year, and 4 years in a row, every one of his clients had gotten into their number one desired school. But he was like, I can't scale. Like I can't take on any more clients. He's like, I have demand and I can't take it on. So I remember he started hiring people, he started coaching people to do the consult, and he hated it. And so he went back to just being, independent, like just managing himself, being self-employed. He hated running a business because as soon as he had a taste of what being responsible for other people was like, he didn't like it. He didn't want to do it. We had a lot of talks about that. And then, as a lot of you guys are aware, like my daughter, moved into this leadership position, got a captaincy position with her high school team. And I've been talking to the 4 captains, the 2 captains of the boys team, 2 captains of the girls team. And man, there's just such a gap in leadership development, even early in middle school and high school. I see these kids, I'm realizing they get put into a position of leadership and nobody really talked to them about what that entailed. They just know that I want to be a captain. And nobody asks like, okay, well, what do you think comes with that other than it's something I can put on my resume and my application to college? And so I think that there's a ton of crossover here to a lot of things, right? So it's, what are your answers to the following questions? And again, I loathe a PowerPoint presentation that is just slide reading. But I mean, really, like I told Steve last night, I was like, I just want to get on a call. Like I'm hyped up about this, and I don't care if I just get on a call tomorrow and just read these. So I'm going to try to not do that. I'm going to not ask Kat to read while she's driving because I'm sure that it's really small on the screen. But yeah, there you go. You focus on the road, Kat. Stephanie, I know you got your camera turned off. I'm not sure where you're at. Are you in a position to read anything? Or it's just going to be me, Jason, and Steve reading stuff today?
Sure, I'll read. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask too. I have a million things to do.
All right, Stephanie gets the first set of 5 then.
Okay, great. Are you willing to devote all hours of the day and night, 7 days a week to your command? I don't have a wife, but is your wife willing to likewise when needed in order to make a happy Army community in your unit? I would say is your partner.
There you go. I didn't want to edit. I took it as is. I thought about massaging this stuff so it was less military related, and I was gonna, change some of the stuff to be No, I'm gonna copy paste this stuff.
Hey, 2020, women are in the Army too, okay?
That's right.
Is your family willing to be secondary if necessary to the company, battalion, group, regiment, company command? I don't know how to, sorry, my ESL is kicking in. Brigade or division. I want to say brigade.
It's a soft G, I think.
It's Portuguese. it's brigade.
It's French.
Yeah.
Exactly. Brigade.
Stephanie, stay on track.
Oh
you got
man,
the
I
next
missed
bullet
this.
point.
Are you willing to learn, teach, stress, and live with the basic fundamentals necessary to make? Sorry. I lost myself. Necessary to make your unit good and still believe that your great talents for bigger things are not being wasted.
And you got one more on there.
Hold on, let me move you guys. Do you like to be with your people? Can you live with their energy, points of view, and the problems they create?
Yeah, so I want to take this in chunks, right? Before we even move on to the next. I mean, I think about in this industry, whether it was 10, 15 years ago at Bally, Steve, 24, buddies that are at LA Fitness, guys that are at Equinox, TSI, like, man, you got to ask these questions if somebody's getting ready to move into a GM spot, a fitness director spot, a operations manager spot. Like, there's been times like we've done events at midnight. There's been times when we're getting ready to do stuff. Everybody's got to show up at the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's been times we've had to go on trips and you're traveling out of town. Like, are you willing? Like, these are just not, being in leadership is not, Steve, you said this before when we used to talk about the weekend team leader position. You don't put your leadership hat on Friday morning and then take your leadership hat off Sunday night. You're not a leader Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Like, you can't, leadership is not a hat that you take on. Like, you're devoting, by accepting a leadership position, 7 days a week, day and night, you're in a leadership position, right? Is your partner willing to likewise when needed in order? Man, like, you're not operating in a vacuum. If you're not single and you've got a significant other, you making a decision to be in leadership, that's them too. You're making a decision for them that they're going to be effective, right? Speaking from personal experience, right? Is your family willing to be secondary? Like, there's times that I miss stuff. I'm sure Steve, Kat, like we miss things sometimes because we're traveling, we're on the road, we're not there. Like, you're not making a choice in a vacuum. I love number 4.
Hey man, I remember I don't want to cut you off, Donnie, but I remember Stephanie being at a Laker game doing club ready stuff. So it's not even always thinking like the whole, hey, I got to be at work instead of be with you. Sometimes it's kind of splitting duty too. And you're at things and you got to get pulled away to do something like that too. So it's not like this clear kind of black and white. Hey, I got to be at work instead of be at home. Sometimes you're at a Laker game having to change pricing in PT packages so we can put a deal in on closeout or something like that.
Dude, it was New Year's Eve and I was still getting it done.
That's right.
Exactly.
Like, hold on, we're about to pop the champagne. Hold on, I just got to step out real quick. We'll pop the bottles here in a second. Man, are you willing to learn, teach, stress, and live with the basic fundamentals necessary to make your unit good? Man, that's everybody wants to get bored with the basics and do other stuff. And if you have the slightest inkling or sense of like, I want to be doing stuff other than the basics and like, I'm more talented. It's not about you and what you're talented and able to do. Like, the shit that your team's always going to need is the basics, and that's never going to change. And if you're about to get bored with that, don't step into leadership. Like, just don't. Do you like to be with your people, man? That's an important one, right? And I love the part where that finishes, right? And the problems they create. Like, yeah, like your team, no matter how good they are, there's going to be times like they cause problems for you because it starts and ends with you, right? It begins and ends with you. It's not about you, but it begins and ends with you, and the buck stops with you. So I thought that was a good one. Second sort of slide here, same thing. There's 5 on here. Steve, you want to chomp on these ones?
Oh, most definitely. First of all, can I just say how upset I am, slightly embarrassed, and at the same time that it's taken this long for us all to be on a call again? Can we kind of promise each other that it's not going to take that long again? I mean, seeing Jason just puts a smile on my face, man. I saw Ophi kind of dip in the background there for a second at Torrance and stuff, man. Vince was like that when I saw him turn his camera on there for a minute. Who knows what he's
for a
doing,
run.
but yeah, something like that. But so I don't want to derail that. But Donnie, thanks for taking the lead and putting this together, man. It's great
man.
Kind of seeing everybody. So first bullet point, are you willing to take the hard knocks that come with carrying responsibility for the failure of your subordinates? That's a big one. Next, can you juggle at the same time all the balls of training, maintenance, tests, administration, inspections, communication, messes, supplies, athletics, marksmanship, discipline, public relations without dropping any of them? And you can insert all of the other plates that you got to juggle as a, fitness director, or any of that. That's a good one. Are you able to do many things concurrently, or are you or are you a consecutive doer? Can you manage a complex job? You definitely have one of those. All right, next, can you receive and carry out orders? Are you a good follower as well as a leader? That's $1 million bullet point right there. And last one, can you stand tough competition from the other units in your outfit and still retain a spirit of cooperation and teamwork with them? Another big one, sales and ops.
Yeah, and so again, I mean, obviously, this is that last bullet point. I'll kind of work backwards, right? It intersects with, obviously, with the heavy military framing and lens that through this is from. It's not going to come as a surprise, right? The podcast I was listening to last night was the newest Jocko podcast 251 with him and Leif Babin were on covering, a lot of the stuff that's just sort of their basics that led to the two of them putting out Extreme Ownership. But then you're working backwards, right? So couple podcasts ago about Face, episodes 249 and 250, Jocko talks about kind of this first book. It's the only book that he's ever given to other people. He said that he was on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and Tim Ferriss, one of his questions he always asks is, what book or books do you recommend? And when Jocko was on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he asked him, I mean, there's only one book that I've ever given to anybody, and he said it was this About Facebook. Where this content is coming from is the guy who wrote the About Facebook. This is a guy that he referenced in his book. So now you're going back, you're going back 3. And so anyway, I was listening to the Jocko podcast, but that last bullet point there, can you stand tough competition from tough units and still maintain a spirit of cooperation? What that made me think of, right? Kat knows this. I told Kat I'm juggling podcasts and audibles right now, right? I'm not listening to the same person every day. Like since I listened to Jocko last night, today when I'm working out, I'm going to be listening to Simon Sinek. And The Infinite Game is the book that I'm listening to right now. And he talks about in The Infinite Game, so there's some overlap here. There's this chapter about a worthy rival. And not, you're comparing, right? When this other person's name comes up and this other person's face comes up on a call, when you see a commercial with this person, like he was like, I kept comparing myself in having this like subconscious inferiority complex to this other person in a negative way as like a rival. And when they got to be on stage together and talk to each other after they were on stage together, there was this sort of mutual understanding of respect with each other. And he sort of pivoted to this concept of like, man, it is so healthy to have worthy rivals that push you. And that's what I think about, especially like in our industry, again, regardless of the department you're in, sales, ops, PT, you've got 10, 15, 20, 400 other people on that DPR that you're comparing yourself to, and you're not always going to be number one. You're not. I mean, I know like Vince and I, when Vince and I were both FDs together, and there was a year Vince was FD of the year and I wasn't. And there was a year where I was FD of the year and Vince wasn't. There was times that, we were kicking ourselves in the shins because like we were like, man, I'm at 93% year to date, and I'm, mediocre at best. And, you're not always going to be number one. And how do you deal with that when you're not, right? And then
hey, Donnie, when we're done here, if you'd like, I can screen share you taking the flag off the wall. I still have the video of you taking the flag off the wall in Torrance, sending it to Long Island. I don't know. I don't know if this is the right time for that, but I just wanted to offer that up.
That video will live on forever. That was a painful time to admit, like, man, the run at number one came to an end.
I had a Jerome Brown jersey on, which makes it special.
It does. I was wearing a Jerome Brown.
Also, I found that flag stuffed in a bin in a laundry room.
That makes me angry right there. because I could hang that up right up here. We'll take care of that. Thank you, Vince.
Donnie's about stuffing highlighters and kicking chairs again.
I almost brought it back.
You should have. That thing should not be there right now. You know, man, the bullet points number 2 and 3, right? That concurrently or consecutive. You can't be a consecutive doer. Now, there's a dichotomy in that, right? So for those of you guys that have read Dichotomy of Leadership, there's a dichotomy in that, right? There is a position of, if you're multitasking, you're being less efficient at both things. And that there is a huge amount of power behind singularity of purpose and just putting blinders on and getting something done. But we also have roles where, as Steve said, man, you're spinning multiple plates. You got a lot of different stuff coming at you. And if you're the type of person that you're a consecutive doer, I need to get this done before I can start on this. And then you're missing the whole like delegation and assignment and trusting others. Like you've got to, in leadership, you're going to be a project manager of sorts, and that's going to be multiple projects, right? You have to be able to juggle things at the same time, man. And that first bullet point, like you said on that, on that previous slide, that and number 4, right? Those two things, this bullet point number 1 and bullet point number 4. Are you willing to take the hard knocks that come from the responsibility for the failure of your subordinates? Like that, if that question is not getting asked in an interview process for somebody moving into a position of leadership, you have missed the broad side of the barn. Like, Steve, that was for you. There's not a lot of barns out here in California or in these parts. Are you willing to take the knocks that come from carrying responsibility for the failure of your subordinates? Man, when the team fails, you can't point and go, well, the team didn't. No. You're in charge of that. Team fails, that's on you, right? And the like you said, man, the $1 million question there: can you receive and carry out? Are you a good follower as well as a leader, right? Up and down the chain of command kind of falls into place there, man. That's something right there. I'll bang these ones out, and then Jason, I'll probably have you finish it. There's one more slide after this. I'll have you take that, right? Are you physically and emotionally fit to carry the load, right? I mean, there is a grind to what we do, and mentally, I think, has to be on there too, right? Are you physically, emotionally, mentally fit to carry the load? And those things are intertwined. If you're not taking care of yourself physically, you're more inclined to be mentally and emotionally drained. If you're emotionally and mentally drained, you're probably not going to be taking care of yourself physically. And that can either be a downward spiral or an upward vortex. Vince was in New York for a bit. He knows all about polar vortexes now, and how quickly it can get cold in Long Island and just start snowing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you got to take care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. Do you have the courage to make and stand by tough decisions? Again, I think that's one that I think anybody in the interview process is gonna say yes to. And then you really find that one out when the rubber meets the road. I don't know how to pressure test that one. I don't know how to get a real answer to that prior to somebody being in the seat, but you'll know when it's time to know, you're gonna know. I love this one, right? And this one, this came up today for me. I had a member reach out to me on Instagram because what somebody was doing in their private life, you don't have one. Like you're in a leadership position for a corporation that you work with. You're in a position of leadership. You don't get to post stuff on social media or Twitter or Instagram or like it's going to come back. What you do publicly is a reflection of your professional self, right? Or are you and your family willing to live in a goldfish bowl where your actions are closely observed by both subordinates and superiors, right? We've all had people that their boyfriend or girlfriend comes into the gym causing a scene. I'm sorry, that's on you, right? Whether that's your significant other, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your kid, your son, your daughter, they do something at work or outside of work, you do something outside of work, doesn't matter. Like you're on the clock. Again, that goes back to that first slide, first bullet point. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're on the clock. You don't get to take your leadership hat off. Are you still, man, this, yes to this one. Are you still enthusiastic and cheerful when confronted with seemingly impossible tasks to be performed with inadequate means? We have all been there where you want me to do what? And I don't have the tools to get that. Yep. I know that you don't have the tools to get that done. We can't get you the tools to get that done, and you still need to get it done. And you need to be enthusiastic and cheerful about it. Like we're allowed to be in this office together with the door closed and we can have it out. But when we leave this room, showtime, smiles on, we're going to go get it done. And again, I think if you have history with somebody, you can predict what they might do in those scenarios, but that's another one where, you're going to find out when it's on somebody's shoulders if they can do that or not. And are you willing to take responsibility yourself when things go wrong and correct a bad situation rather than blame it on the staff or hire headquarters or subordinate, right? The third party. Oh, well, corporate said, or, that's probably, Steve, maybe you can co-sign on this one or course correct me on this one, but I feel like that's probably one of the most frequently encountered sort of like new leader Achilles heels that you encounter, because it probably doesn't get discussed a lot and they might not see the problem with it because they've seen it done by other leaders. And so maybe subconsciously as a new leader, your prior GM, your prior fitness director, your prior ops manager, you heard them say that. Third party corporate, that's not our fault. That's something that corporate did. That's poor leadership. That's weak leadership, right? Like you got to stand in front of it. You're the leader. Do you take responsibility yourself, right? Extreme ownership, right? Just intersecting books.
Hey, Donnie.
Yeah.
Can I jump in there with you? Yeah. I think what makes this one really interesting from an observational development standpoint is you don't know when people are displaying good behaviors in this manner because they're standing in front of it. So you don't know, was this really their fault or was this somebody else's fault and they're just standing in front of it? So a lot of times you can clearly kind of measure, hey, this is when it's done right and this is when it's done wrong. This is kind of one of those that you really only know it when it's done wrong.
Yeah.
You don't really know it
right?
when it's done right because yeah, for sure. So I think this is a really good one, but to your point on, hey, I don't know how to pressure test this one, or I don't know how you role play a situation like this, because for all we know, they may be getting shown that on a very regular basis. They're just not kind of categorizing that as, oh man, there's an example of Jason not blaming Matt St. John for not, attaching a high enough percentage or bringing him into book starter session. That's just Jason saying, hey, we got to do a better job of this. I'm going to be more involved at point of sale to make sure we do this. And they don't really know what's behind that, right? So this is a little bit tougher one, but I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's hard to know that you're right. It's hard to know if you're in a subordinate position right now. It's hard to know if you're seeing it exhibited. And if you don't know better, you might not think there's anything wrong with the way that somebody else is constantly blaming. But you do know when you've learned that that's not okay and you see it, you see it right away. So Jason, bring us home with this one, man. I got the Zoom timer coming on me now.
All right. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Got you.
Okay, perfect. Well, first and foremost, it's amazing to be sitting in a call with all you guys, all the greatest that used to do it, that I used to look up to. So thank you so much for inviting me to this call. But also, you are exactly right. If I knew all of this stuff going into fitness director, man, it would have been a hell of a lot easier. Let me tell you that. But all right, let me get started. Are you willing to do your best, even though it apparently is inadequate? Absolutely huge. COVID. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Are you confident you can produce a superior unit with the ordinary run of manpower? Can you inspire personnel to produce outstanding accomplishments? Are you willing to take a chance on being relieved for attaining only mediocre results? Do you really want a command, or do you just want to get the command on your record? Oh man, that is absolutely huge. Just
Yeah.
leading from the forefront and not just putting it on your resume like that. No, that's huge.
Yeah. So this slide just has the 4, but yeah, I think, man, like again, I think you know,
On this side,
I'll tell you what, man, the number 3 there, one for me, like, are you willing to take a chance on being relieved by mediocre results, right? Like that's, look, you especially in our industry.
The last 4, yeah.
Yeah, I don't get the last bullet point.
Yeah. You know, are you willing to take a chance on being relieved for attaining only mediocre results? Like, man, that's real in this industry, right? Like there's going to be times, Steve, I remember I remember us having a conversation probably 6 years ago, you know. There we go. I got booted out. Got booted out of my own call.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, that last piece there where it was, you know, it's are you willing to take a chance on being relieved? Man, we get scored constantly. I remember having a conversation, I think it was 2014, Steve, about, you know, moving into a different position. We were on a run that wasn't great. There wasn't a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. We were going to be losing some heavy hitters. And it's like, man, that's the reality of being in a ranked, in a sort of rack and stack environment, right? Like, hey man, we need you to go to a different spot. Like we got to put you in command of a different unit, right? That last bullet point, right? Do you really want command, or do you just want to get it on your record, man? I think there's a lot of people that they want to be the manager because they want to be in charge. They want to be the captain because they want to be in charge. And man, if that's all you're doing it for, that you're gonna hit an iceberg real quick. On the flip side of that, right? If your answers to these are yes, if you answer yes to all of those, man, you should be in it. But if you've got somebody asking you, how do I get promoted? How do I get in command? Hit them with those questions. I think there's 19 of them, right? And so where this came from, and I'll certainly send it out afterwards, but this was all written by this guy, Brigadier General Bruce Clark, born 1901, dropped out of high school, enlisted in the army, or dropped out of school, enlisted in the army at 16 years old in 1917, served in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. And so, I mean, you want to talk about a dude that's a G, but so when I was hitting up Steve and Vince with these last night, I was like, this guy wrote this like 75 years ago. Those 19 things, he wrote that damn 75 years ago, and I could put that in an SOP manual tomorrow as is, and it would be fine. So, I mean, it rings back to there are no new fundamentals, right? It's just, there are no new fundamentals.
Hey, Donnie, what I think is super interesting about this too, for any of the OGs on the call that remember this Bill Parcells QB commandments that we used to go through all the time, which when I was first reading through these, when I was visiting with Donnie last night, I was thinking, man, this is like the modern day QB commandments. But what I think is so interesting is Bill Parcells, that's Hill, and he coached at West Point when he first started. And I'm curious as to at one point had been exposed to him, and he actually kind of took the QB commandments from this. Donnie, you with us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got cut off, but like I heard what you were saying, like, you know, how much of that was him getting exposed at West Point and applying those principles to the 10 QB commandments. For sure.
Wi-Fi.
I have the
Oof.
me and Spectrum are having it out right now.
There he is.
Yeah.
It's all too much more. Donnie, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you there. I don't know if you can hear me, but yes.
Got it.
Yeah, so we can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, no, I caught what you were saying there at the end before I got booted. When I hang up here, me and Spectrum we're gonna have it out about my internet. But yeah, like you're right. I didn't even think about that Parcells was at West Point, and I think there's a high likelihood that he did. he got a piece of that.
Sorry, you keep cutting in and out too.
Getting there. Cat's doing hers too.
Oh, there she is.
Hi.
Kat, I know you're driving. I was just texting you. I keep getting cut off, but I didn't want you to read slides, but I wanted you to do something here, so I wanted to have you close it out.
Oh man. Close it out. I wasn't prepared.
Spontaneously drop it on you there.
Well, I mean, shit, you said it. No new fundamentals, right? I mean, it's one, I can't tell you like how nostalgic it is to be on this call. And two, it kind of adds more nostalgia talking about kind of the same things that we always do, right? And Donnie, you know this, kind of my starvation of books, and like I've just been diving headfirst into just so many books lately, and it's like you said, right? It's just a different perspective, but the same fundamentals always left and right. So I don't have much to add, really. I think just keep on doing what we've all been doing, which is winning.
That's right. Well, hey, I know that, again, I appreciate everybody jumping
Sorry,
on.
I'm trying to focus on the road.
Yeah, you drive. You drive. Yeah, I was just pumped that a couple people were able to jump on. I know it was super short notice, but like I said, I hit Steve last night and I was like, man, I want to do, and then I was like, nah, fuck it. I'm doing a call. Like we're just